I am still not able to reach out to her, so I think this is going to take a little while. I've just sent a request to Fulcrum Studio and I think she'll connect in a minute.
I'm there. I can see myself. I can see her.
Yeah, hi, ma'am.
Hi. Sorry, yeah, it's been all over the place.
That's okay, that's perfectly all right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so just go by the introduction and we welcome
The
you
volume
here.
is not too good.
So just a second. Audible?
Yeah, is it audible now?
Yes, yes. Okay, Okay, so Falcon Studio was selected by Art Daily as one of the top 10 female lead practices in the world. It has been acclaimed for the nimble walls that it makes between the realm of architecture, interior design, and product design. Husna Rahman has received recognition and award for outstanding work in all the design disciplines. The design is a laboratory of motion, emotion, and ideation, resonating with the vision to move beyond the rainbow. She seeks the moment of detached free thinking that only the purest form of creation can provide in the place where the air is rarefied. So, ma'am, welcome, and we have a lot of viewers who've already joined us. So we will
Sorry,
proceed with
viewers,
the.
for being late. There was some technical glitch. It's not quite as simple as sitting on a dais with a mic. So I'm getting used to this whole new journey.
Okay, so ma'am, we'll proceed with understanding the subject that we have chosen for today, which is less is more. So in this context, I would like to ask you, what about this much used aphorism is meaningful to you? How would you like to describe it?
Well, it's exactly the way you ask. I am dazzled by this aphorism because it has survived over the last 110 years, Meenakshi. It was coined circa 1910, and ever since it has meant different things to different people. It has caught the imagination of generation after generation, and they have used it to mean contextually whatever seemed true to them. So it's ubiquitous use in that it has been used generically right from Kim Kardashian tossing out her cardigan, considering that it's last season, to a very distinguished architect in a gravelly voice and addressing a very distinguished audience. So it has had its use across the spectrum and has still carried its own weight wherever it's traveled. So that is extremely fascinating to me. Scattered in multiple landscapes, and yet these three simple words, less is more, paradoxical though they are, because when you hear them strung as these three simple, I think it's literary genius, less is more. It really is a paradox, and yet its interpretation has been so powerful through the last 110 years.
Okay. So also about this great man, Mies the man. Do tell us about what you consider unique about his journey, who has actually got this phrase into the design philosophy.
Oh, well, Mies the man, wow. The early modernist masters, uh, people who, without even knowing it, steered us in a direction that in some way or the other we all still follow. Meenakshi, no matter what we do and what vocabulary we choose to define it by, whether it's form or function, all of us can still trace what we do, the words contemporary, modern, minimal, back to these early modernists. So these were the path breakers, the trailblazers, the influencers of over a century. They used material which we today think is ubiquitous and commonplace, maybe glass, tubular, steel. But at that time, these men were taking great leaps of faith. They were re engineering the way the world worked. And it
Right.
was hair raising in terms of the fact that the world had never seen quite like it before. Mies the man, interestingly, and I like to do this, consider me, an amateur psychologist, but I like to look at the psyche of a man. Who is he? Who are his demons? Has he made peace with them? Are they still haunting him and then driving him further? I believe it's the angst and the shape of our soul that determines the people and then the artists that we are. So art cannot be divorced from artist. Creation cannot be divorced from the creator. So to look at his buildings and his products in isolation do the man no justice. He comes from the legacy of a stonemason's son, a humble
Right.
man who never really wanted to talk to the press or create any kind of design doctrine or dogma, who reinvented himself several times. Mies van der Rohe was not even his name, but Mies van der Rohe was a play of four words which he used to say that I'm a new person, not who I was raised to be, not where I was born to be, but I will determine my fate. And left a small provincial town in Germany to, at 19, be part of big city urban Berlin. So he was a man with ambition and undeniable talent. And what's also fascinating about him is his inner fire and will. In Berlin, he wanted a commission, and the firm was doing a very large facade, ornamental facade at the time, of a departmental store. So he had an interview with them wherein they said, how soon can you do it? Expecting it would take a week or two. And his answer was, would tonight be too late? So that again shows us that without the drive, the inner fire, the will to be somebody, you really have to put your dreams to rest.
Right.
So in this particular picture, Meenakshi, we look at the cross vocabulary between a man who could design a skyscraper as easily as he could design a chair. In fact, his chair was path-breaking in so much as he wanted to design a cantilever chair without the aspect of legs.
Right.
Close the door. This is called working from home. You need to tell your baby now and again to close the door and get on with the show.
That's the new normal.
Yes, absolutely. He's like a little puppy running between my legs, which is adorable, and I'll have it no other way. But yes, between Mies and the little fellow. So coming back to the chair, if you look at this chair, it is absolutely astonishing. Designed in about 1910 again, he used a material like tubular steel, which was only used for garden furniture, never in the mainstream modern aesthetic. And he made this chair the Weisenhof chair, a part of everybody's every day-to-day life and experience. And for the first time, there was a mass production of a chair, simply because its cost was low and its lightness and aesthetic was high.
Right.
So the chair was as important and as high detail as the skyscrapers that he made. And one may argue that a chair was almost more complex to design because it has to take your weight, your load, it has to look aesthetic and hug you and be as comfortable as probably a teddy bear hugging you. And hence its aesthetic is more complex than even that of a skyscraper, so to speak.
Okay, so one more question related to the great designer. How do you think Mies changed the design landscape?
Well, Meenakshi, it's a very interesting thought. He was a very spiritual man, a deep thinker, somebody who, without even realizing it, without even preaching it, created this amazing philosophy of spiritual design where he believed that it was the bones of a building, the anatomy, so to speak, the carcass. He wanted the structure and the technical aspect to dictate the building. You know, we as architects talk about architecture, and it's very interesting how Mies believed in the absence of architecture and replaced the absence of architecture with the art of building, the art of construction. He believed when two bricks met, architecture began. So he did not, like the star architects of the modern time, decide and pre-decide with his ego and his will that a building will have a certain form, will have a certain design, will have a certain style. Style was not part of his vocabulary. What we talk about today, which style are we working on? That did not exist. For him, the building dictated its style by virtue of its structural composite bones.
Right. He
So
also
that,
emphasized on the yeah, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
So he also emphasized on the decluttering of the spaces, which I
Yeah.
read. So
Yes, not as simple as the word decluttering, which would mean more like removing things, but for him, interior spaces were as significant and powerful as the exterior, which is the hallmark of a good architect, mind you, because the
right,
sensation of his spaces was inclusive. People went in there and felt like they belonged. He wanted them to have a spiritual experience that was devoid of him. He wanted to be the outsider and disappear. And he would design spaces in such a way that elements were invisible. They were integrated into walls. Everything existed, but they were not visible in as much as there were many strewn elements across the room. It all had a designated, pre planned space for it. So it kind of created a calming for the eye. And the experience of the space was enhanced because there was less to actually disturb its comprehension and its ability to touch you. So his interior spaces were extremely well thought out. And the detail to which he went was even detailing the track for a curtain or the motor for a certain electrical device, or even heating water pipes in a bathroom, or
right,
even the kind of furniture which you could see from the Weisenhoff chair, the Barcelona chair, which was designed during his seminal project called the Barcelona Pavilion, and various other product which really has traversed time with the lightness of a butterfly.
okay, great. So also, my next question is, Pritzker, prize-winning architects who aren't qualified architects. Why do you think that may be?
Okay, again, an interesting paradox, like less is more. And I say this because I believe that this is the only profession, architecture, where a man, due to his beliefs, his poetry, a combination of his logic and his technical skill, can actually create a building which can win a Pritzker Prize. Now, you'll agree with me that you will not hear of a doctor or a lawyer who's won the highest prize without studying the field and having a qualified formal training and education. A lawyer has to know his books. A
Absolutely.
doctor has to
Yeah.
go through the
Yeah.
5 year program and then some. So, how does an architect then win the highest prize in architecture without having a formal training?
Mhm.
So, that is an
Right.
intriguing question, which I hope to answer by virtue of these wonderful men, Mies van der Rohe, Corbusier, whose name
Yeah.
again was not Corbusier, it was Jean-Francois Jeanneret. So again, a play of their names, interesting psychological twist there, how they left behind their names and moved into a realm with a new design and a new entity. Uh,
Yeah.
Peter Zumthor, Tadao Ando. Tadao Ando, in fact, was a truck driver, and he was in the boxing arena for some time before the calling of architecture made itself known. So for me, I think that these people had a larger driving force. And sometimes in life, you have your forces, your vital forces, which are beyond your need and your want. And when they spring from within, then you become the person you were always meant to be. And few of us
Right.
in life have that opportunity to find who we really are. A lot, many go through life lumbering through thinking this is who they are, and never really having that surge within them to find that beauty within. So
Right.
Tadao Ando believes in the architecture of nothingness.
Yeah.
And when something is nothing, then it is everything. So he believed in a very simple form and expression, but a very complex journey through that form, where the experience touches you with its nothingness and becomes everything. Uh,
Right.
Frank Lloyd Wright, who's known as the American master, unequivocal, nobody nears him in terms of his legacy. He was disdainful of the educational system and said that instead of telling you how to go ahead, they talk about the past and the present. They talk more about what was than what can be. They
Yeah.
suppress the light by taking you into places of darkness rather than uncloaking the opportunity and the ability to rise higher into the sky and find aspects of yourself in the world that are yet to be explored.
Right.
Uh, Peter Zumthor believed in the art of building very much like Mies van der Rohe, and he looked at their skill level in terms of being able to uh, literally like a piece of beautiful carpentry, which he actually studied. He had gone to a school where he could put together pieces of wood beautifully, and that's how he says a lot of his buildings are. They have great ability to kind of put themselves together like a great piece of cabinetry. And he
Yeah.
talked about them being able to understand the art of construction and building. And that is what made them the men that we all respect so much. So it's not just the talk about architecture, but getting your hands dirty, understanding how two materials meet, the technical joints between them, putting together elements like a beautiful jigsaw puzzle and making them come alive and resonate through that
Yeah.
beautiful synergy.
Right. Also, how do you see aphorism as being of relevance today in today's,
Uh, I think it's astonishingly and dazzlingly relevant today, and it's made its journey over the last 100 years, each time meaning a different thing to a different person. But today, for me, it becomes alive in the sense that less is more, and we must do more with less.
yeah,
We, for the past over 50 days, have been cocooned within our homes. I take the analogy of Buddha, who sat under the Gaia tree for 49 days to receive enlightenment. And if not enlightenment like Buddha, well, at least we should have an awakening within ourselves to realize why it is we've been sitting under our metaphorical tree. And hopefully, our tree has brought with it its realizations, and we have not been, thick skinned to kind of think that this is just one of those epidemics that will come and will go. And there are deeper consequences and ramifications over periods of time. So for me, it's about becoming the hermits of design, wherein we are able to do a lot more with fewer resources, wherein we use less energy, we use less excess, we use less waste, and we have more creativity, more passion, more context, more austerity, and definitely more world unity for people and policymakers to come together and create a coherent world wherein we are in fact heading from now on in the right direction.
right. Okay. Okay, so does this philosophy of less is more enter into the design language of Fulcrum Studio?
Well, I think it has crept in its own interpretation and subliminal way into everybody's design vocabulary. And at Fulcrum Studio, uh, you know, I have to admit, there was the Fulcrum Studio and there is the Fulcrum Studio, and the evolution is what I value very much. And even as we go on, there are projects which we are detailing and designing which may not have looked the same had these days of incubation within our homes not taken place. I know now that when we go out, we will have more sensitivity and more awareness of the fragile world of the nature around us.
Right.
Some of the images that you see on the screen show restraint. I wouldn't dare talk about less is more in the same breath as Mies van der Rohe. That was a man whose clarity was dazzling, and his interpretation of less is more was incredible. Little nugget of information. Do you know that it wasn't even Mies who actually coined the phrase? He worked with Peter Behrens and, interestingly, also Le Corbusier during the early part of his career at the AEG turbine factory in Germany. And at that time, his mentor, Peter Behrens, while he was working on a facade, said, less is more. So he carried Peter Behrens' advice right through his life. He became director of the Bauhaus, which we talk about as being the early modernist movement. He was the third and the final director of the Bauhaus. and after the Second World War went to America, where he created stupendous buildings too. But yes, Fulcrum Studio does carry its ability to have an aesthetic which refines and reduces the excess to a language of poetry. So when you see this bed here, for instance, it is a platform into which the seater as well as the bed space is wedged. It
Yeah.
contains two skins, one outer skin of stone, the inner skin of fabric. So rather than
Right.
having different and diverse disconnected pieces of a bed, separate seaters, separate table, right now you see the whole language of poetry merged into a seamless design prose. So that's the way I translate it. I believe that a space should have a language of pertinence and of simplicity, because in that simplicity lies its beauty.
Right. So also, ma'am, I was actually trying to go through some of the projects that you have recently completed, and I found one which is called ACA. Uh, the design that you do, they actually look very very simple, and but you also use this word somewhere that you derive it effortless, with the effortless effort. You just,
Yes.
it just comes into your mind. You don't really go by a lot of things. It just naturally comes to you and you do it. How do you really achieve that precision of giving each space a character of its own?
Yeah. Meenakshi, I think that the act of creation is the closest you can be to the creator. And if you
Yeah.
believe that it is because of your genius and skill, then I really think you're misleading yourself and haven't really touched that part of you which
Yeah.
is constantly in communication with the higher forces. So when you do
Right.
actually design, yes, it's your pencil, but in a very, very uh, humbling way, you're an instrument for a lot of magic that happens through you. So in ACA, for instance, or other projects, it's distilling yourself down to that energy. This form that you see in front of you was actually a distillation of the lotus, which is their puja room. And the client's only brief in the largest penthouse in the city, which this is, 15,000 square feet, was that they wanted the puja room to be in the center of the space, the nucleus. So we thought that it can't then be a room, it requires to be a sculpture around which you circumambulate. And hence the distillation of the lotus into its fronds and the golden inner pod, which in fact contains the murtis. And it acts like a sundial because the sky is open above it and its shadows constantly change during the day, therefore creating a very kinetic space and allowing the viewer to know the time without even looking at the watch. A very, very open space, so it isn't, you know, encumbered by the weight of many things. And you see this fluid, white, pristine sculpture at the end, and you're like the aspect of nothingness, similar to the idea of nothingness being everything. We kind of use and extrapolate to create poignance and purity, which has the ability to resonate deep within, because design is only experiential. It cannot be described. It cannot be seen in a photograph. Everything you show me right now, under whether it really conveys the message. And in fact, I'm doubtful that it does, because it is so purely experiential that you need to stand in front of it quietly
Right.
and allow it to interface with you in a way that's meditative. So
Right.
even architects like Peter Zumthor would never invite press to projects, because you can never capture it in a photograph. You can never
Right.
quite capture it in, a video or any three-dimensional device known to man. It's simply for your
Absolutely.
spirit and your soul.
Right. So in this project, I saw you have used various elements, various stone forms in each of the spaces that you have created. So it has a birdie art design which is there, which has been used in the lamps which you have done, the furniture which is there. I'll just show the viewers those pictures. Like this one, this is a birdie art.
Bidri.
So, yeah, how do you really, find out that detailing for each client? Because your work is something which has so much of detail and they are so well thought of that you can't really ignore any of the spaces, be it a bigger one or a smaller space. So how do you really achieve
Well,
that?
for me, it's again, the micro with the macro. Think about the light and the space and how it enters and how your fenestrations work, how the anatomy of the building represents itself. But how does that reflect the soul of the space, which is really where you're going to sit, how you're going to
Yeah,
feel, or how your experience is going to be while you lift your cup from your table and put it to your lips, how you're
right,
going to feel as you move through a transitional space into your bedroom, how you're going to feel when you look up and do you see the sky from your roof, and does your window make you feel like you can be more than you are? So those are the qualitative emotions that we like to touch upon. And in this case, I have to tell you that you have to touch upon yours, but you have to impact the lives of the people around you. And this brings me to one of my favorite points of discussion, the Indian craftsman. Bidri is
Midri,
created by
yes,
100 languishing people in northern Karnataka. It's the ability to engrave metal, in this case silver, into a alloy of metals, and it is absolutely resplendent. But yet, you look at the form of our chair; it's very contemporary. It can be
yeah,
a living room in New York or an apartment in Bangalore. It does not have a definition about where it cannot be because it can be everywhere. And yet,
yeah,
the resplendence of the art definitely has a cultural connotation.
right,
So culture has to kind of straddle countries and continents and worlds for it to kind of remain relevant. So you use
right,
the artist, but you do not get stuck in the Jurassic age of design wherein things looked the way they did in palaces. You create the modern palace
right,
and you create the sustenance for people who, in this particular scenario over the last 50 days, call me and say that we have rice and dal given by the government. We don't have enough to make the curry required to make that palatable.
right. Okay, so there's one more very interesting project which was there. That's I just showed this one,
Ditara.
Nitara House. Yeah. So over here also, this is something which elaborates. It is so it actually speaks for itself. The color combinations and the material that's used. So also talk about this particular project.
This particular project is, it's like an art installation. All our projects are, things that we've never done before. So there's a great sense of excitement and a great challenge. Now you see these sheets of metal. We're not faking this. This is not a, polyurethane that pretends to be metal or a laminate that looks similar. This is the real McCoy. And getting these long sheets and installing it was, for me, like as if I was creating the pyramid single handedly. So, this is when we stand on site day after day, night after night, if necessary, while the client has already set the puja date, and we know that we have like literally 8 days, and the situation is terse and tense and breathlessly nerve wracking, but you
Yeah.
have to get the job done. So,
Right.
we have all these artists who come, and life takes on a life of its own as you stand there and the emotions run high and things get installed, and you see finally this blazing copper, which
Right.
looks breathtaking and which the client will then appreciate after thinking that you're probably a complete nut job and that you've bitten on more than you can chew. He'll call you 20 days later and say, do you know how beautiful it looks in the wee hours of the morning when the light bounces off the copper and then it creates a shadow on four reflective surfaces? And I
Yeah.
think, right, it was all worthwhile. The madness, the chaos is definitely something that put a smile on someone's face. So we do it over
Yeah.
and over again. Yeah.
Also, I see another element which you very extensively use and very wisely. You actually make the use of natural light and the light effects that you create in your project. So, they. you can actually make the project quite sustainable by bringing in a lot of natural light which flows in, and then it gives you a very natural surroundings as well. So all those things are really commendable. And how do you identify those spots in the project where you think that, okay, this is going to be the optimum space of utilization?
Context of a site, just understanding its strengths, playing up to it, understanding the directions, where you want the light entering from and at what time of the day. Just carving out the spatial journeys of people, so that apart from the various rooms, you have many interesting pauses along the way. Like when
Yeah.
you see this photograph, you see that belly in which you have those sculptural wooden seaters. So
Yeah.
that is not a formal living room, and it's not an informal space. It's just a place to pause.
Yeah.
And like we all need places to pause in life along our journeys, we also
Right.
need within our homes to have areas that transit between spaces in a way that allow you to rest for a while and just feel like life is better than it could ever be.
Okay.
And light and shadows. In fact, light is just the it's a play. Darkness is the absence of shadow. Shadow is just the intangible, which for me is more important than the light. So when I'm often thinking about light, I'm thinking, what are the shadows it's going to create around? And
Right.
what are the pools of darknesses that I want with the light? Because I definitely don't want everything overlit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the darkness has to be respected as much as the light.
Correct. And the way that that light goes with the day falls to a sunset, the movement of the light is I mean, it's I actually saw a video of those projects where you used that concept, so it was really commendable. And it actually soothes your soul when you sit into that environment, which is so pleasing, so positive, so full of energy.
It is
In
all
this
energy.
content, yeah.
Yes, Meenakshi,
So
I know what you said.
yeah, and also, ma'am, I'm sure you must be getting a lot of different, because clients, when you have to deal with the clients, you have to really make them understand about what you are really trying to achieve. So, how difficult or how easy it is to convince a client to match up to your expectations or your design, the thought which you have created for yourself and for that client as well?
Yeah. You know, uh, I think that people come to you with a certain understanding of what you've done. We've been doing it for 20 years, so there's a body of work that they look at and they're aware of. But within
Yeah,
that, there are their requirements. And I think that from the first presentation onwards, when they
yeah,
see the clarity of the narrative, and that there is a desire to bring them into a behavioral pattern, not just a beautiful home, but to elevate their thoughts and their experiences into a rarefied area, there is a beautiful surrender
yeah,
wherein they know that you're almost as, if not more passionate than they are about their project.
yeah,
So there is this sense of, um, okay, these are my parameters, but fly and have a great time flying with it. And we will fly
right.
with you because we want to see how far this can go.
Okay.
I've had people who nurtured and indulged me with the design and given me faith, because you
Yeah,
need that to create something new. You need the backing of somebody who says, go out there and we're with you. We're
absolutely.
holding your hand through it and we're going to
Yeah,
have a good time through it, because that good time shows in the end.
right.
But people are very discerning when they look into your eyes the first time and they see that you have a very clear idea as to where you're going.
Yeah,
But the rest of the journey can be woven in between. They want that journey. They want to
yeah,
experience the upliftment and the incandescence of having something where the journey is almost as significant as the living in it.
right. Okay. Also, the projects that you have done so far, I see a lot of exclusive raw material that has been used. So I have just jotted down. I'm not I'm not very knowledgeable in elaborating those materials. But then, like lapis lazuli, the stone
Yes.
which is related to ancient times. Then you have malachite to protect against evil eyes, which you have used. Then mother of pearl, building is we've discussed. So, how difficult it is to achieve all these raw materials in a place? I mean, in India, do you actually go places to find this material and shortlisting this for this particular space? How do you really get that?
Yeah, Meenakshi, this is a very collaborative field. So
Yeah,
you are only as good as the people who are around you. And
yeah,
over the past years, we've had great synergies with the craftsmen, with the stone layers, with people who've waltzed into our office, and then we've set up these relationships with, and who are equally eager to push the envelope. So if I
yeah.
have my stone person, I will say, okay, let's try inlaying. Stone into stone is commonplace. How about putting in copper? How about doing some steel? How about doing three metals with one stone? How
Hmm.
about adding some semi-precious material? How about concrete and metal? How about, so, you're a conjurer, so to speak. You are going where you've never gone before. And that's
Right,
the joy of waking up every single day and saying, I'm stepping out of my home because I'm going to do something which challenges my parameters, wherein I can be that other person who I wasn't yesterday. And you come back with
right.
that zing saying, it's like a laboratory, isn't it? Like a little chemical process,
Yeah,
wherein you have all our offices often strewn with so many different pieces of, there'll be a piece of terracotta, a piece of metal, there's a lighting project, a prototype that we're creating. At the other end, there's a table. And it is just this constant research and this ability to never stop pushing forward and exploring the world and yourself while you're about it. That you will find people and they will find you.
right.
And when you have the clarity of an idea again, when you know that this is what you're looking for, uh, it's almost impossible that it doesn't actually work out the way you want it. And along the way, there's a different story for a different show, but in the end, it is what you wanted.
Right. Okay. So, and also, ma'am, in your spaces, I find the space is pretty rich when person gets into the detailing, but you still prefer keeping it very minimalistic in the view. So, how important is it for you for not filling it up all with a lot of things and then maintaining
For
that?
me, it's about having a powerfully simple experience. If you go into a space and you're overwhelmed by disjointed thought,
Mhm.
you are not going to be able to read that story. It's about, I'm a writer as well. I have written a couple of books and another one on the way. So
Okay.
it's very similar to that thought. You have a strain of thought. And if you're going to bastardize it with very many others, there is no poignance to that story. And how
Mhm.
is architecture any different? You're telling a story, but in materials that are stone and brick and concrete and just about anything else you choose that can create a structure. So you're
Yeah.
writing in a different medium without parchment and paper and pen. So it's a prose that you create, and the simplicity of that prose is important to me. And hence, the moves are very purposeful, they're very deliberate. Um, Sometimes we inhabit a space in a way that it leaves room for very little else after we are done. And that's a comment clients have made, that it may not even really accept too much else that they might want to add into it. But that's the way it is, because there is that script that's already written. So you can't throw in characters randomly, because there's a very clear sense of where you're going and how to get there.
Okay, and also when it come to designing, you being a designer, so was it something that you actually wanted to pursue, and or it just happened by accident, or how did it really go? So, if you would like to
Yeah.
explain your journey about
Our
it.
academic system in India, to be honest, Meenakshi, does not really allow you to explore yourself.
Yeah.
We kind of get into these pigeonholes of space wherein people are doing arts or science, and the various layers of who you may actually be may never really emerge until much later. So I was, on that path doing economics and philosophy in Bangalore, and it was a trip to London, which actually helped me open up my mind to the world of design. I did a 1-year program there. Then I heard about the
Okay.
finest school in the world, which was Parsons, sent my portfolio, and I was admitted. And that's wherein the ability to actually see design at its most complex and it's most, I don't think you'll ever see design in all of its being. I'm still seeing it every single day. But to be able to kind of comprehend that there's a world out there which is endless and boundless became a beautiful realization to me. And I followed that path with all earnest and honest consequence. And interestingly, my daughter is now following that path in architecture, and way ahead of me in terms of being accepted to the Yale University, the
Wow.
Ivy League, for her master's in architecture. So
That's
I kind
amazing.
of, thank you. So I kind of straddled the boundaries between having been there 20 years ago and through her eyes, seeing the new world and understanding it from the point of view of academia, which is a very interesting place to be at our very troubled times.
Yeah, of course. So I forgot to discuss about this chair, which I also found. So any description
Yes,
or your thoughts
true.
about this?
Yeah, I did this about 8 years ago, and I'm always excited to see this because I don't think it'll work on your video, but this chair pivots. Do you see that circular wooden base? So there's a
Yeah.
pivot which allows it to totally circumambulate. And as it spins, that silver jacket is iridescent. It catches the light and it's absolutely magical. And if you look at the actual refinement of this design, if you were to sketch it, it was just one gentle curve, nothing more and nothing less, sitting on a
Yeah.
circular base. And yet the embellishment and the intricacy of the jacket that it wears, the silver lines, are so poetically composed and geometric, so that each ridge and each indentation catches the light in its own unique way, and it creates this dazzling swirl of light and motion. So this is the way I like to use our ancient craft and artistry. The moment it sits in your contemporary living room, you feel like you could be in the Falaknuma.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very, very unique design. And what's the material that has been used in this chair?
Silver. It's
Okay.
the whole chair is wrapped in pure silver.
Okay.
The fabric is the blue lining, so it's like a jacket on the exterior of silver, the inside being soft silk, and then the wooden base on which it rotates.
Ma'am, also for an architect or a designer, it is not a very right thing to ask, that which has been your favorite project, because every project, which especially when I've seen your projects, I feel that you're emotionally involved in those projects, where
Deeply.
yeah, I mean, it is like a poem. It's something that really describes, and if you just keep flowing like a water and then keep digging in, and you find so many new things, new, even if a small design or a small object is lying over there, it also holds a lot of meaning. So that sort of thing is, I mean, you're poetic in describing your designs, or also making those. So
There's a
how?
lot. Thanks, Meenakshi. That was too kind. But I have to tell you one more thing, which harks back to Mies and less is more.
Yeah.
He believed that design had to be true of the epoch, the EPOCH, and let that be undeniably ingrained into everyone who's tuned in today. Design of the epoch, design
Yeah.
of the time. It had to manifest the trials, tribulations, the forces, the motives of the current time. And that to me is very
Right.
exciting. If you're
Yeah.
going to replicate the past in the present, you have not served your generation well. You've not left your mortal imprint in the sands of time. You have not said, I was here and I created, because you have only replicated. So
Right.
when Mies said that design has to be of the spirit of the time, I really believe that if inventiveness and innovation have any value at all, then they have to be representative of that generation, of the materials available to you, of the technologies you can harness and maybe even improve upon.
Right.
So when you see our craft as well, the fact that this chair pivots and it's not static, it's a kinetic element. And I'd like people to be able to swivel and turn around at the window, and maybe then turn around and be able to face somebody. So that experience of being on a chair can change every moment. And it's a technology that's available to us. So I really do feel that it's incumbent upon us to create a language which represents that we were here and we had the intellect and the ability to forge our path with courage and with sometimes even failures, because when you do something new, it isn't always a success. But yet to kind of be unafraid and move into the future. And I think right now we are redefining the future. I'm designing a building right now thinking, how would people like to access a space post this pandemic? Should the staircase be a more important element? Should it herald itself right from the outside simply because people may not want to take an elevator anymore? How do I create many spaces within a public space which make people feel they're part of a group and yet isolated? So every part of our process has to represent the problems we face at the current time without just mindlessly looking back at an era which did it for their reasons.
Right. Okay. So, ma'am, we'll be reaching to the end. We have actually reached to the end of the session now. So, before calling it off, I would like you to give a suggestion to the upcoming architects or the blooming architects, basically, who have joined us here. Any piece of thought which you would like to share as an advice?
Yes. The next time your grades aren't too great, think about Mies van der Rohe, Corbusier, Zumthor, Ando, and think about the fact that you don't have to be the most qualified person to and to the craft. So that means understanding the whole landscape of design, going out there, seeing those buildings for yourself, not just through the lens of a book, drawing passionately, honing your craft. Yes, this is actually a distillation of an idea. Use your hands. With the advent of technology, people like Mies, the modern masters, they were brilliant with their hands because they thought through their hands. So do not surrender yourself to a device thinking it's going to do your job. Always realize that your thoughts and your hands are inextricably linked. And technology cannot compensate for that tactile connection. I'm looking at you, Meenakshi, but I'd much rather see your eyes and see your energy in person. So what we do now is what we have to do. But please don't let that become your crutch. Let not that machine and that technology take you into its tributary towards an area where you will never reach the sea. So learn to draw immaculately, express your ideas, and you will find that the moment you start moving the pencil, your ideas will flow in tandem and create this rhythm which is surprising and absolutely essential for your craft.
So that brings us to the end of the session, ma'am. Although we started late, but I must tell you that each word that you've shared here has been really insightful, and I congratulate you for that. And I also want to thank you on behalf of Litzel for being a part and being here with us and sparing some time with a kid around, which is a challenge, I must say.
Thank you, Meenakshi. When you said it was an hour, I thought that's going to be a lot, but it doesn't seem like it's been that much time. I've had a great time.
Yeah. And also, so ma'am, we usually wind up before 1 hour so that we don't go off abruptly. So it's, I think, 45 to 50 minutes we have already spoken. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone who are connected with us here. We will promise you that we'll come back with a lot of new sessions which will be equally insightful. And I personally thank all of you, and also ma'am for being here, and all the best to you, and please stay safe and just take care.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi, and to everyone, all the students out there, follow Fulcrum Studio, and there's a lot of ongoing thoughts that you'll enjoy. Take care.
All right, ma'am. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.